Hello and welcome to the Fantasyland Basketball Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Shorten. It has been a while. I apologise to everybody who listens in to my Spotify or watches on YouTube or Apple Music, TikTok, all of the above. You may or may not know, a few months back my wife and I had a little baby boy, and for some reason I thought it was going to be free up some time. I don't know why, but I thought, I'll have some extra time to be able to do some stuff, do some podcasts, do some TikToks, and I have not, and it just got away from me, so apologise for that. Obviously we're in the All-Star break now, so I think we all get a chance to reset in the fantasy world and reflect on the year so far, reflect on how poor the All-Star game is. Mac McClung, he has saved the dunk contest, but he can only do so much. They can't just keep coming back and doing the same things every single year. Obviously the dunks are going to be different, but I think this year there's definitely a bit of the shock factor of him coming in. 3-point contest is going to be consistently boring. The skills contest, I actually don't mind. I think that's a really underrated area for the All-Star break. The rookie sophomore game, just like the All-Star game, nobody plays defense. It's just a showcase of being able to stretch the floor, a couple of dunks, all that sort of stuff. I actually prefer the celebrity game because there is at least a bit of surprises there. The All-Star game sucks. I personally, and I've seen it around, so it's definitely not my idea, but I personally think that they should go back to the East versus West, forego the best record gets home court advantage. I think it should be the winner of the East versus West in the All-Star game gets home court advantage in the finals. People may disagree with that, but if they're wanting the All-Star game to be a money generator for them, they need people tuning in, and the only way people are going to tune in is if it's a competitive game. Obviously they're not going to play super hard defense, but in the past they've at least played it for one quarter. For like the last quarter of the game, they've at least played defense because they want to win. They want to win money for their charity, but they didn't this time. It was, I don't know how, but it was a blowout. Obviously Jason Tatum played really well. Jaylen Brown also played really well, but they played really well because no defense was being played on them. So I don't know. I think it's a bit redundant. I think that they should either do away with it or make it incentivize it more and make it a little bit more competitive. In Australia, they've got the All-Australian team selection, which is for the Australian rules football. They don't actually play a game. They just list players who have made the All-Australian. It kind of seems as though that is just as impactful as naming the All-Stars. Obviously, everybody wants to make the All-Star game and make the All-Star team, but playing the game is just such a waste of time. Just so boring. There is no entertainment to it whatsoever. Anywho, that's a 3-minute rant of the All-Star break, I guess. For anybody who actually cares, I'll give you a little bit of an update of how my teams are going, and then what I wanted to come back for was to do a bit of like a mid-season, not even mid-season, All-Star break awards. So where we're at so far, we've got 20 or so, 23, 24, 25 games left of the year, so things can change a little bit. The honourable mentions that I'll go through may have a chance to kind of jump up and take over that award. But when it comes down to it, we're coming into a really exciting part of the year. Potentially a really frustrating part of the year, but exciting nonetheless. So, give you a bit of an update on how my teams are going. So, in terms of redraft sides, I'm in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 redraft sides. I'm in 12th in one league out of 20 teams, which is not great. A record of 7, 9, and 1. In another 20-person league, I'm sitting at 5th. I'm in playoffs. Playoffs has started, so we're partway through playoffs. In one league, it's a 12-person league. I'm 5th there. In another 12-person league, I'm sitting third going into playoffs in a couple of weeks, and then another one, which is only a 10-person league, I'm sitting third. I'll be honest, I haven't loved any of my teams this year. There are guys who I think we all love certain guys, and we always want to draft certain guys on our side. Miles Turner for me is one of those guys. I've only got him in one league, which really stings. Like I think he's such a game changer, but I just missed him on a couple of my where I was drafting from. I missed him in a lot of places. Tyrese Halliburton, I'm desperate to get him this year. I missed out on him pretty much everywhere, which coming to the silly season that may be beneficial. But we'll do a review at the end of the year. So to get into the awards, I suppose we may as well start with the one that I suppose one that I think everybody is going to assume is the most obvious one, which is the fantasy MVP. So far, I think it's pretty obvious that Nikola Jokic has been the most consistent player and the player that we expected to be where he is at the moment. Drafted across all of these average draft positions that I'm going to talk about across ESPN, Yahoo, and Fantrax. And Jokic went 1.4 on average across all of them, and yeah, he's shown why. He's always going to be a stud. Doesn't hurt you anywhere. Can really carry your team on percentages, on points, on boards. Really good assists, obviously, from the position that he's in. Steals are okay. Blocks are okay. Triples are okay. As I said, doesn't hurt you anywhere. And is so durable. He just plays games, obviously. And the honourable mention there obviously goes to SGA having a phenomenal year as well. But Jokic, for me, is the MVP, the fantasy MVP so far this year. That may change depending on how we go towards the end of the year. He may get injured. Fingers crossed he does not, but he may get injured, which will obviously impact as well. But on a per-game basis, I personally, per game and total value, I think that Jokic has been the MVP so far. And there's not too many other people who you can probably argue that he is at that point. The biggest surprise, so I'm actually going to go down a different route for this. So I think a lot of people would say, well, the biggest surprise and the most improved are one and the same. I don't necessarily think so, because I think you've got to take health into it as well. For me, the biggest surprise and the biggest positive surprise was SGA. As I said, his combined ADP was 45 across Yahoo, Fantrax, and ESPN, and he's playing at a top 3 level for fantasy this year. That for me is an honourable mention. I don't think that, for me, he wasn't the biggest surprise. We know that whenever SGA is healthy, we know that when SGA plays games, that he is a stud, and he's going to be somebody who is going to be a top 15 sort of guy. Obviously, the top 3 is a surprise, but the concern is with SGA. Well, the first one is that he wasn't expected to start the season. We were expecting he was going to miss a month. Obviously, he did not. Surprise number 1. The second surprise, which we're still yet to see, is whether or not he gets shut down. With OKC, there is always the concern that they're not playing for right now. They've got a haul of draft picks that they're going to want to use, and they're going to want to make sure that they are going to maximize their draft capital. I don't see that changing too much this year, but the curious part is I don't get a shutdown vibe from OKC about SGA this year. There are a couple of others that I think we may see shutdowns for and from. I think that Josh Giddey is one of those guys. Lou Dort is coming off an injury, and I think that they may shut him down. They've obviously gone real early with Chet, and Poku may be in that category as well. But I don't know if they're going to shut down SGA, because they're not exactly winning a whole heap of games, but it's just whether or not they want to use the last 20 or so to go into absolute freefall. But yeah, SGA is a big surprise, but for me, he's not the biggest surprise. For me, the biggest surprise this year has been Brook Lopez. His average draft position was 131 across all three platforms, all three kind of major platforms there, and he is just going lights out. His career highs, or not career highs, but he has played most games for Milwaukee this year. He's blocking at pretty close to a career high, I think. I'm just pulling up his numbers here, but we're looking at per game. So he's played 57 games so far this year. That's all, if not very close to all. Last year he played 13. He's got his highest points in the last 4 years. He's got his highest triples in the last 4 years. He's got his highest boards in the last 4 years. Highest assists in the last 3 years. Highest blocks in the last 4 years. Highest field goal, and turnovers and free throws are still pretty decent. But his blocks, going from last year, which last year he was, he still outperformed his ADP last year. He was still, or outperformed this ADP last year. He's sitting inside the top 30, and you got him at 131. 2.4 blocks, 15 points, 2 triples, and 6 boards. The biggest concern that I always had about Brook Lopez was his ability to actually get rebounds, because it feels as though he just is going either for blocks or the trail threes on offense. And I think it's been a bit of a combination of injuries to Bobby Portis, injuries to Giannis, injuries to Chris Middleton, that he has been playing more and been playing in a different role, more offensive role, but he's been playing unreal. And I think Brook Lopez, for me, has been the biggest surprise this year. 131 as an ADP, and he's sitting at a 29th ranking in the season so far. I don't see that slowing up. His blocks have just been unreal. And if you drafted him, which I wish that I had, because as I said, I made some errors with my drafting this year, and I went early on a couple of guys that I was really high on. Jalen Smith is one of them, and I went Jalen Smith in like the 70s or 80s, and I could have got Brook Lopez right at the end of the draft and be in a different position, I suppose. But for me, Brook Lopez is the biggest surprise. Obviously, keen to hear what your thoughts are on that as well. Disappointment. This is going to be one that maybe gets a little bit of hate, which I'm okay with, because I think that it's depending on the. I should probably say this is for category leagues. This is not for points leagues, because this next one that I'm going to say in points leagues is very, very different value to his category leagues because of certain tanking in areas. The guy that I've got here is the biggest disappointment is Giannis. He was drafted on average top 3 across Fantrax, ESPN, and Yahoo. He has been 118th ranked in category leagues this year. Obviously, he's missed games, 3 injuries, but his points are obviously good, his boards are obviously good, his triples are okay for Giannis. He's not a 3-point shooter, but he's done enough to make people play defense on him at the perimeter, which is fine. That's noble. That's what you want. His steals and blocks are, and this is something that I said in preparation for the draft last year, so last season's draft, that I was down on Giannis because of his regression in steals and blocks, which whenever he came into the league, you were looking at 1.5, 1.5 sort of numbers, or 1.3, 1.8, something like that. Last year, he managed to buck that curve and go up, but so I thought, hey, maybe he's turned the corner, or gone back to his more traditional role of really helping out on defense and really being a bit of a pest, and using those limbs to interrupt offenses. But this year, 0.8 steals, 0.8 blocks, and 65% from the free throw line on 13 shots a game. Now, if you're punting free throw, Giannis is still a top 10 sort of guy, or top 15 sort of guy. But, and maybe whenever you're drafting him, you're going into a punt mode. But having said that, and obviously you're not going to be taking, I don't know, you're not going to, if drafts were tomorrow, you're not going to take somebody like, I don't know, Malachi Branham over Giannis just because of their current ranking. But he's been poor, and he has been probably really frustrating for owners, because every matchup you go into, whoever you draft after Giannis, whether it's Devin Booker and then Jimmy Butler, you're still not going to win free throws because Giannis is just such a heavy tank in that area. Add to that the really poor regression in his stocks. He's just over 1.5 total from Giannis. It's just really, really bad, and I like him, but he's really only dominant in 3 areas, and that's points, boards, and field goal. So for me, as it currently sits, unless we see, and he's obviously injured right now, unless we see something to end the year, he's going to be outside my top 10, potentially outside my top 15 for category leagues, and I'll cop a bit of hate for that, but that's fine. I'm willing to do that. Let's roll into most improved. I think that a lot of us can talk about the fact that Lauri Markkanen has been an absolute stud this year. Again, looking at it, I find it really frustrating because I've only got myself to blame, really, because I have always been high on Lauri Markkanen. He's always been a player who, when he plays games, and when he has opportunity, when he has usage, is a really good player. But where his downfall is his health, and he's really struggled to stay healthy. I don't know how that's changed. If anything, Utah are playing him in a more aggressive role than what Chicago played him in. So I don't really understand. I don't get it. I don't know whether or not he has maybe put on a bit of muscle, become a little bit stronger, but I'm just looking for where he is currently ranked, and he's just inside the top 20, and his ADP was 87. Looking at the guys that you could take at 87 or around that mark, and who I looked at around that mark, makes me sick. It actually does. Like, I took Saddiq Bey in a few leagues, which is just trash. I took Colin Sexton, which is just trash, compared to Lauri Markkanen. Like, Trey Jones, Jalen Smith, oh my god. Just really poor. Isaiah Jackson. These are guys that Jared Vanderbilt, these are guys that I still don't understand how they haven't been as good as they are, but Lauri Markkanen, hindsight is 2020, and he has been just so good. As I said, his games played has been the biggest surprise. He has played 54 games, so he's only missed a handful of games. 24 points, or 25 points on the season. 9 boards. 0.8 steals and 0.8 blocks. So let's talk about that compared to Giannis. Lauri Markkanen is not a defensive guy. Giannis is known for being a good all-round player. And Lauri Markkanen's combined stocks are 1.2. Giannis is at 1.6. Like, seriously. 51 from the field, 87 from the line. Like, you're going into a draft tomorrow, you see these numbers, you see that Lauri Markkanen is ranked higher than Giannis. You're not taking Lauri Markkanen above Giannis. But stats don't lie. He has been absolutely dominating this year and playing some really good basketball, and that's why, for me, he's the most improved player this year. Going on to the waiver wire one now. I've got a lot of honourable mentions here. A lot of guys who started really well throughout the year, or picked up towards the end of the year. So my honourable mentions. You got Bol Bol, who I don't know. I don't really know why he's not getting too many minutes now. But well, obviously Jonathan Isaac's back, but even before that, he was trending down. Bol was drafted north of 200. Played some really good basketball for a couple of months earlier in the year. Dennis Smith Jr. averaging 1.6 steals, 6 assists. Played some really good basketball. Obviously, that was while LaMelo was out, but still played some really good basketball off the waiver wire. Trey Murphy went undrafted in a lot of leagues, 153. Played some really good basketball again. Zion being out, and Brandon Ingram being out. Can't really fault him for taking that opportunity. So good on him. D'Anthony Melton went drafted in some leagues, but went undrafted in a lot of leagues. 131 was his average draft position. Again, I was high on him because of we know what he can do per minute. And obviously we had Harden out for a bit. We had Tyrese Maxey out for a bit, which gave opportunities to D'Anthony Melton. But since those guys have come back, he's fallen off a bit, which is really disappointing. It'd be great if he was like 3 inches taller, because he's a slight frame sort of guy, so he plays bigger than that, but it'd be great if he was just slightly taller, slightly heavier. But for me, the waiver wire pickup of the year, I drafted him. I personally drafted him, but because he didn't have a pathway to minutes early on, I needed to play waivers to get some wins and had to drop him, and then somebody in my league picked him up, so I had to bloody trade for him, which is Walker Kessler. Average draft position of 138 means that he was drafted in some leagues but undrafted in a lot of leagues, and I think that he's going to have a big end of the year, and I think he's going to have a huge year next year. Utah have done so well out of the Rudy Gobert trade, and it's going to become comical. Back whenever I started following basketball, there was a lot of talk about how Boston fleeced Brooklyn for all of their picks with the Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, and was it Ray Allen or Rondo? Or Jared Wallace. And they, as an organization, they struggled for such a long time. And I think we're going to see the same here with Minnesota. I think that they're eventually going to blow it up, and I think that they're going to keep Rudy Gobert because they have invested so much into him, and they may even move Cat. But that's just my thoughts. But Walker Kessler has been enormous this year. After a slow start, he's averaging 2.1 blocks, nearly 8 rebounds, 8 points, and is absolutely dynamite from the field. If we're looking at his last 30, we're looking at 11 points, 10 boards, 2.5 swats. Huge. He's not great from the line, but he doesn't get there all that often. Only twice, 2.5 times a game. So you can live with that. That's not going to hurt you as much. But he's just been unreal. And he's somebody that I'm going to be targeting early and often next year, and I'll be disappointed if I miss out on him. But that's life, unfortunately. Be interested to see how he goes and where his average draft position is compared to the likes of Jared Allen, Miles Turner, Rudy Gobert, Evan Mobley, and how all of that, how his year this year, and with all those big guys in and around about the same 30 to 50 range, who goes first, who goes second, who goes third, all of that. Be curious to see going into next year. If I was to rank them, I'm going to go with, I'm probably going to put Evan Mobley first. I think he is going to have a huge year next year, and we've seen how good he's been in the second half of the year. Miles Turner, or JJJ as well. Miles Turner, then probably JJJ. Injury concerns there. Walker Kessler, Jared Allen, Rudy Gobert. Probably in that order. Anyway. So we've got two more. We've got the Never Again Award, and then we've got the Silly Season winner, or league winner. So honourable mention here for the never again. I've got two people that are on par, but honourable mention is Kawhi Leonard. He is getting older. His body's not necessarily getting healthier. But when he plays, he's just so damn good. So I drafted him in a few spots because he slipped to me. I instantly regretted it because we had no update for his return. I started losing games, but you can't drop somebody like Kawhi Leonard. So, and you can't trade him for the value. So you're kind of in a really difficult position. I'm thankful that I held on to him because he's been really good when he's played, and he's been really consistent when he's played. Like he has had a rest day here and there, but where I thought he would be minute capped or where I thought he would be, he'd be missing more games, he hasn't. So that's really good. But still, I'm not going to put myself through that at the start of my drafts again because I think it's really important to get wins early. And Kawhi Leonard, there's just so much unknown there. Give me Kyrie Irving over him any day of the week. I'll take Kyrie Irving's insanity over Kawhi Leonard's health. For me, the number one person who I will not be drafting again unless they slip past 100, which, God, I hope they don't because otherwise I'll be forced to take them, is Terry Rozier. Scary Terry. Last year had a really good... So he was drafted at 52nd on average, which if you're like me in some deep leagues, you're having to reach, or you're having to get him on your third or fourth pick, which is just absurd. When he went to Charlotte, there was concerns over his field goal percentage, and rightfully so. Whenever he was at Boston in the secondary role, he struggled. Really good defender, really good playmaker, could put up points, could shoot from range, but and could get himself to the line, but there was concerns over his ability to knock down shots at a good clip. And he went to Charlotte and he was serviceable. 45% is pretty decent for a guard. And then he comes out this year, and for the first part of the year, he's shooting at sub 39% and on huge volume. And with all of the opportunities that he had with Gordon Hayward being out, with LaMelo Ball being out, it was team tanking, it was weak tanking, and I just can't put myself through that again. He's really good from the line. He's really good for bulk triples. He's really good for points. He's okay for assists. I would hope that he'd be better, given that he's such a ball dominant player, but doesn't do anything on the defensive end really, and he just tanks so hard on field goal. Like, I can live with it with, say, a Fred VanVleet because you're going to get nearly 2 steals a game out of him, but not with Terry Rozier. And at 52, I just don't know if I could ever do that again. Yeah. It's annoying because I've never been a Terry Rozier guy, but in so many of my leagues, assists in every league, assists are so scarce. So I started with, in one particular league, I started with James Harden. And then I went with Fred VanVleet. And then, no, I didn't. Or maybe I did. And then, did I do that? I don't know if I did do that. But it was, this is going to annoy me now, I've got to figure this out. For where I had to take him, because I needed the assist, I just don't know if I could do that again. It was just so bad and so frustrating watching him just absolutely. Kyrie Irving slipped to me at about 20 odd, and I just couldn't not take him there. And then I took Fred VanVleet. Then I took Ayton and then Rozier. So I got Rozier at a decent price. Got him after his ADP, but he just hasn't hit anywhere near that. So disaster. I feel like this podcast has just turned into me whinging about all the players that I took or didn't take. But that's fantasy basketball. I think if we all had a time again, we would look at different players, or we wouldn't drop certain players because we had certain wins up our sleeve, or we had a bit of a gap between our opponents or winning games. But the last one, which is the silly season league winner. So I've actually got, and I'm going to add somebody to this. I had two, but I'm actually going to add a third to this list because I think he's going to have a really big end of the year. And let's add him in here real quick just so I can look at his numbers. So the first one I've got here that I've just added in is Malachi Branham. San Antonio they moved away Jakob Poeltl because they are in free fall mode. They are wanting to maximize their opportunities in the draft. Don't mind that at all. And he has been playing such good basketball. I don't care that Trey Jones is coming back. That doesn't bother me too much. I think that Malachi Branham's going to have a really big end of the year anyway. He is... Let's have a look at his last 30 days. Let's have a look at his last couple of weeks. 16 points, a steal, 2.5 triples, and nearly 50% from the field. Can't ask for too much more than that. I think he's going to have a really big end of the year. If he's sitting on your waiver wire, I'll grab him on. I can see here on ESPN, he's only owned in 5.6% of leagues, and I think that is ridiculously under-owned. He should definitely be closer to the 40 or 50% mark, if not higher. So Malachi Branham, I think, is going to have a really big end of the year, so you should go get him. Jalen Williams has been really good for a little while now, and he is somebody that I own pretty much every single league because what I have learnt from OKC is that Sam Presti is if they drafted they've got what feels as though they've got a template of a player that they want, and that template is people that are going to work with SGA or in an SGA model. So Josh Giddey is a long guard who can play some really strong defense. Lou Dort is a good defensive guard. Jalen Williams can play multiple positions. These guys are none of them are as good as SGA, but Sam Presti is looking for a similar mold in these sort of players that can stretch the floor, they can defend all positions, they can create, and they can defend. Jalen Williams fits that mold. And if OKC continue to draft guards early, I will continue to pick up OKC guards. I don't care if it looks as though the fit doesn't work. OKC are going to play them. Jalen Williams is somebody who I've owned for a number of months now, and he's just been so good over the last 2 weeks. 18 points, 5.5 boards, 3.5 assists, 3 steals, 55% from the field, 100% from the line, has not missed a shot. The dude has just been unreal. 2.5 steals over the last month. 1.2 over the course of the season. Given that he didn't really play that much to start. Huge. 29 minutes a night. Unreal. He went undrafted pretty much everywhere. So go get him. He's on ESPN. Again, he's owned in 36.3% of leagues. Like, if I was doing a waiver wire podcast, it would be pretty boring because I'd just rinse and repeat the exact same players every single week until people picked him up. Jalen Williams, Malachi Branham, and this next guy, Mark Williams. I put him into my draft guide and spoke about the fact that he could be and I think on one of the podcasts I spoke about how he could be an end of the year league winner. and I stick by that. Over the last month, even though he's only been averaging 18 minutes a night, obviously that's stepped up now that Plumlee's moved on. We're looking at 8 points, 6 boards, 1.6 blocks. Good percentages. Over the last, let's look at his block numbers over the last week or so. 3, 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 4. Double-digit boards in half of those games, double-digit points in half of those games. Like, as a rookie, he's going to be good in some, bad in others, but overall, the guy's a stud, and there's a reason why a lot of people were high on Mark Williams coming into the year, because they could see the writing on the wall. Like, Plumlee sucks, can't play defense, is a decent creator from the center position, but they don't need that. They've got Lonzo Ball. They've got Gordon Hayward. These guys who can create and have got experience creating, like Lonzo Ball, LaMelo Ball. Yeah. I think Mark Williams is going to have a really good end of the year. Other than that, when are you guys going to next hear from me? I vow to be better. I vow to be more consistent. I vow to do podcasts and TikToks more regularly. Yeah, I vow to be better. So, thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for continuing to show me love. I hope everybody's drafts have held up over the course of the season. I hope everybody's in the playoff hunt, if not in their playoffs right now, and are being successful. That's about all I've got for you this time. As always, don't forget to rate and subscribe.